Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Before we get started, how about you press that subscribe button and hold that like till the end and ring that bell so you know when I'm uploading new videos. Alright, so I've been gone for about 2 weeks. Please forgive. Um, as a lot of you in the community may or may not know, or those who are subscribed to my channel, that I dibble and dabble in many different things. As you may or may not know, I have been an organizer for a large-size dance convention for the last 8 years. If you don't know, I am a professional performance artist, dance artist, I should say. And so that was one of my labors of love that I did. It was like a nonprofit type of setup, but I ended it. This was the last one. So I just wanted to let you know what I was doing. That's the reason why I was not uploading, because I really did not have the free time to do it, and I couldn't find a way to schedule in, like, to do my videos. So I did want to let you know what was up before we jump into the video today. So what I am doing today, since I'm just popping back in and starting my schedule back up, the series that I was doing will continue on. As you know, that's the horror romance series, the cosmic horror series, and my book tour series, as well as my growth book collection series, the one where I purchase new books, and then so also that pretty much concludes a TBR list as well. So a book haul series, which is pretty much in conjunction with the book tour, book collection series that I do. So I wanted to let you know that those will continue on. I am currently going to add a new thing to my channel, which is going to be more like a talk show type of setup. It's going to be live streamed here. I will have guests on the show. It's going to be writers talking about writer woes and different aspects of being a writer, our thoughts on being a writer, just different things. And then we're going to have special episodes where their readers are invited as well. It's all live, so you can always join the chat if you are not a guest on the show. So I'm looking forward to doing that, because I do like to talk about things, and especially in the areas that I'm in. So I'm looking forward to starting that. I haven't locked down a schedule for it yet, but I'm thinking it's going to probably be on the weekends, because that's my for sure safe net to make sure that the videos always get up, and also that the live stream can happen. So I'm looking at like a Sunday right now for the live stream, so that way I can also get other guests, authors and writers on to do that. So anyway, that's what I'm up to and I'm planning to do. But let's jump into what today's video is about. It's the next episode in the horror romance series. Now, that whole type of book can really be varied. And the one that we're talking about today, if you couldn't tell from the title, is Twilight. And Twilight has its following, has people that like it, people who don't like it. It's an older book at this point. Also, it's a YA. Not exactly in my area that I like to read. I have very, very few YA in the grand scheme of my book history. Because I would say that when I was younger, I was reading above my age level, because I wasn't really interested in stuff my age, more or less. When I'm a little kid, I mean, when I was a teenager, I was already reading adult. So I didn't read any YA really until I was probably in my 20s. So Harry Potter, it's kind of hard to place those, because they run through a series of, age differences. So it kind of grows up with you. So I didn't really include that being in my setting of that. But anyway, so Twilight being a romantic horror in my head, because if you have vampires and werewolves, or in her case wolves, those weren't really werewolves, okay. So vampires and wolves in the story is going to place it in horror for me. And the aspect of the story was supposed to be a romantic setting, romanticism. Um, some people are going to argue that because some people don't really separate human issues and other reality-based things from fictional stories that fall far into fiction, meaning they're not necessarily going to fit in our society, so to speak. In fiction, that can really happen when you start bringing supernatural beings into play. Some things are going to have to shift. I mean, you can completely ground it in human reality if you would like. That's a choice, but I don't really look at my books that way. When I'm reading, I definitely read my books in the world setting that that book is in, and I don't bring in my personal feelings, nor do I bring in my personal issues and other human things that we go through. I try to come at the book from its perspective through my eyes, but I try not to bring in my own issues. Is my point. So let's go ahead and jump in with the first question about Twilight. What is Twilight? Twilight is a YA, in my opinion, a romance horror, though I think it might just fall under, I don't know what they put it under, just maybe romance. But I would say romance horror just because the horror can be the subgenre in this instance. And there's a little bit of like, you know, roundabout, like they'll say like vampire romance. That's not really a thing. But then I've seen like romance, fantasy, action, like fantasy. No. Um, so I'm just going to say romance horror because I categorize things that have vampires and werewolves. Those are not werewolves. Wolves in it. I throw that under my horror banner because there are horror based things that could easily turn to like horror, So anyway, so romance horror in this instance. So that's what Twilight is. It's a story about a girl and a guy, a female and a male characters. They're leads. One is a vampire and one is a human. So it's a romantic story between the two. Some people have pretty much like didn't like the relationship between the two characters, and they were more or less talking about, they were saying that the relationship was abusive. And I have my own take on that, and I've talked about it a little bit before. But nonetheless, that's what Twilight is a vampire romantic type of story. Again, I categorize it under romance horror. So, and who is Bella and Edward? Bella and Edward, as I just said, they're the female and male lead. Edward being the male lead and Bella being the female lead. Her name is Isabella, but they call her Bella for short. And it's Bella Swan and Edward Cullen. And Edward is like 100-year-old vampire. Like, he's like a baby vampire, really. Like, that's not that old of a vampire. And then Bella is just a teenage girl who's, like, she comes off a little, like, maybe just recluse, possibly. You know, some people will use the word depressed, but that's not a word you should be throwing around so easily. So she's really kind of a recluse type. Like, she's kind of like really seems standoffish somewhat to some people. So that type of character, kind of really like close-knit to herself type. But that's Bella, more or less. And then Edward, he's old world, a little old school, parts like, you know, getting married and he's never really been in love with anyone else. So it's like he's a teenager as well. So it's not like, some people be like, oh well, he's 100. Right, he is, but he's stuck as a teenager forever in this case because of when he became a vampire. He was already like 17, so about her age. And yeah, they were the same age when it started, technically. So he's like 100. I think he's just 100, or he might be 117. I wasn't really clear on that, though I read the book quite a few times already and seen the movies. But I'm going to say he's 100 nonetheless. And even so, it still makes him a baby vampire at the end of the day. Alright, so what kind of romance is in this book? Now, I mean, romance is going to be like romance is going to be different for each person. their perspective of what romance is, even though it has a definition. But romance usually for a book usually just means a love interest between two people or whatever, multiple people. So it's just that's generally what's going to be bannered under romance, whether it's a subgenre of romance or just a purely romance novel. And then that's all it really needs to be categorized as romance. So, because everyone's type of romantic relationship is going to be different. So that's the case for this book as well. They have their own romance going on. It's kind of like a tension, like teenager type of setup romance. Like it's not going to be any sex at first. And there's going to be just like, the usual, kind of like don't know what to do, awkward kind of romance and love interest type of situation. That like we kind of want to have sex, but we're like not going to because we're nervous and we're teenagers type of situation. But let's not pretend we know teenagers do that. So, in her case, the author Stephanie Myers, she was Mormon. So her having any of that in like the first book and they weren't married wasn't going to happen. Far as I know, she had a lot more things based around her religion in the book, and her editors and stuff pretty much was like, yeah, you gotta take this out. So that's another thing. If you're a writer too, off subject but not too much, you really need to try to remove yourself from your book, like from your story, like whatever your belief system is, whatever you believe, and unless that's relevant to the story and it's going to be mentioned completely, you need to learn to remove yourself. Like, this is not about you. But it depends on what you're writing. You really can't try not to do that. You are gonna alienate someone for sure if you're just writing a book about your religious beliefs. But if you're gonna do that, then do that, but don't let it be a mistake. Or don't let it be the ruling factor of every story you put out because you can't see past yourself. You're writing fiction. Write reality then. That's just my opinion on that. But anyway, so what are the horror elements? For me, the horror elements would be sometimes the atmosphere between some of the characters, also subject matter, and the fact that it does have creatures in it that can fall under the horror genre. Vampires and werewolves, wolves, or any kind of wolf type shifting creature. So to me, they're more shifters. Like wolfen, they are not really werewolves. Werewolves are the ones that stand on two legs, more like a man, and are beastly. They are not werewolves. So I really wish they wouldn't use that word in the movie. But that being said, that's the element that I can easily categorize it under romance horror because of that. Some people be like, well, those vampires on there are really kind of, sparkly, and they're kind of lame. Like, can we not, though? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were the police of vampires. Forgive me. Are you the government of vampires? Do you know every kind of vampire that exists? Oh, that's right. I'm a writer, so I can just make it up. Hence, fiction. But I digress on that. They're still vampires, even if you don't like the type of vampire that they are. And I'm gonna let this cat out of the bag again. She didn't really make that part up, really. If you know anything about vampire lore, it was done before. The whole factor of the vampire skin glistening in the sun because of the undead diamond effect of the skin. It's not that big a deal, folks. Calm down. Well, I like my vampires more like Nosferatu when they, they're very gruesome and they do this and that. Like, well, it's a romanticized vampire, so what do you want? Anyway, people will find something to complain about no matter what. You don't have to like it. Just don't read it or don't look at it. Whatever. I really don't see the need and energy to complain about something just because you don't like it. Alright, next question. What's the dislike behind Twilight? Well, dislike is a bit irrelevant too. I mean, at the end of the day, you can like or dislike anything. And there's always going to be people who like and dislike things. And it don't mean in fact, doesn't make it factual. It's an opinion. And everyone has an opinion. And they don't matter at the end of the day. Facts are facts, opinions are whatever. You can't say it's a fact that Twilight sucks. You can't say that it's a fact that those vampires are lame. You can't say for a fact anything in a book or movie or show, whatever. It's just an opinion. So, speak on opinion based and stop speaking as if things is a fact, because it's not. But the dislike behind it comes mostly from the relationship between Edward and Bella. You had both men and women disliking it for different very reasons. Some women disliked it because they said that the relationship was abusive, or more like, I guess because Edward's a vampire and he's a bit rough with her. But that didn't happen. Wait. Oh, they talking about that one scene where he, like, knocks her into the wall because the other vampire was about to eat her because she got a paper cut. I mean, that was more acting. Like, they really spoofed that scene up. They made it more dramatic than it needed to be. Like, it's not done well. The whole knocking her into the wall to the extreme, like, he really didn't have to go that far. But again, vampire dealing with a human, that could happen because of their strength level differences. So I let that slide because of the differences. Let's not forget those people. He's not a human. His only thought was to protect her from getting bitten. And because on Twilight, the vampires, if they bite you, you're going to turn. There is no like, oh, I have to suck all your blood out of your body and replace it with my blood. Her vampires don't have that effect and don't do that. So if they bite you, they release a poison into your body. So his only thought process was to get her out of the way. And granted, he pushed a little too hard. So I don't think they were necessarily talking about that, but that's the only scene I can really think about where it was like, oh, he got rough with her unnecessarily type of situation. They also might be talking about the fact that, like, they were just, like, too drawn on each other. They were too into each other to the point of, like, not thinking about others, maybe. Or, I don't know, his leaving and coming back and her being, like, into him to that point. Or obsessed, some would say. I don't really know. Every time someone said it was an abusive relationship, they didn't really elaborate on it. They kind of just threw the word around. Like, watch throwing that word around and make sure you give it a direct definition of what made an abusive relationship for you. Again, you notice I use the words for you. This is a tough subject for people because they have to understand the draw of fiction and someone making up a story that has nothing to do with your reality. Even if it's based in your reality. Doesn't matter. So, again, it didn't really bother me, their relationship, because I knew I was going in reading a story or watching a movie about a vampire and a human relationship, which is going to be sticky anyway. Because one is way stronger than the other. The other one has more pull. They can, like, beguile you. Not that that worked on her, so that wasn't a factor. So, honestly, I think it was popular to dislike it to some people. Dudes are gonna, at that time really were gonna dislike it just because it was like something a lot of females was kind of into because it was a romantic-esque story. And any dude that's women find really attractive, being Robert Pattinson in this instance, they're gonna just probably dislike it anyway because it wasn't them that the women were going crazy for, contrary to what they may say. Besides the fact that they just thought the story was lame or whatever, that's fine. But to me, I'm not the type to put energy into things that I dislike. If I dislike it, I just dislike it. I don't really bother going on a tangent about my dislike of said thing. I didn't like it. No one cares. Alright, so what's the love behind Twilight? Twilight had a pretty good following of people who loved it. Like I said, you also had people who disliked it. You had a lot of merchandise, a lot of things collector. I mean, even I was into Twilight to that point at the time when I first got into it. But that was me with anything vampire based. I always had all the vampire movies that came out. I am a collector in some instances. So I collect like vampire movies, and I have lots of different vampire novels. And then I have vampire memorabilia. So when Twilight came out, and I was actually working at Blockbuster at the time, they had like the big movie posters. So I still have about 3 or 4 of those that are framed. I have like posters that aren't opened. I have like, they had a candy box line, like the, those Valentine's Day candies. They had a box line of those. I collected the boxes, ate the candy. Um, and then different things like little trinkets and stuff, bookmarks, that type of stuff. I think it's fine if people get into stuff and like it. I don't think there's any problem with that. But you have people literally coming after each other because they like or dislike Twilight. Like, relax. Relax. People are allowed to like something, and they're also allowed to dislike it. But you don't have to be an a-hole about it. Either direction. So, I think it was really just popular at the time because it was riding a wave of, like, vampires was in. It was a thing. So it didn't matter what kind of vampires. Vampires stuff was in at the moment. She rode that wave. It did well. So people really was into that. And then there was a romantic aspect. So you can get a lot of females, interested in that. Also the males who like that type of thing. So, yes, I know. Some males don't like those type of movies. Especially during the era of when Twilight movie came out. Things change. Pop culture changes. But like for my generation, it was like mostly females were into romantic-esque movies. But there always were exceptions. There were also guys that were involved and interested in those type of things as well. Either way, you could like or dislike Twilight. In the day, it doesn't really matter. So, my closing thoughts on Twilight. I thought, the book itself, like, if you're trying to come from a different perspective and like, oh, is it a well-written book? There are issues, obviously, but that's like every book that exists. Okay? So that's neither here nor there. If you think Stephanie Meyer's a good writer or not, also neither here nor there. You simply just don't read her stuff if you don't think she's a good writer. You know what I mean? So, coming as the series, the Twilight Saga, I enjoyed it for what it was. I also took it for what it was. I took it for like a vampire romance horror, like, type of movie and book. And she did release it again, Twilight from Edward's eyes, because it was done in Bella's perspective the first time through. And I also have that one. It's different, of course, because it's from Edward's perspective, which I think is a good thing for people to know about, because it's everything that happens and occurs is always this person's side, that person's side, and then the truth in the center. You know what I mean? So, I think that people need to stop interjecting their personal lives into fiction novels. It's one thing if you're reading a nonfiction, that's totally different. But when you're reading a fiction novel about creatures that don't exist in our world, as far as we know, then you need to really take a step back and reflect on the fact that it has nothing to do with you. This book isn't about you. It's something, a type of entertainment, if you will, for you to enjoy or not enjoy. So maybe don't take it so serious. I think that kind of really hurts a lot of entertainment when people try to take every single thing serious. Everything does not need to be about our issues and things that we need to change and things that we need to do and things that we need to talk about as humans. They don't need to be addressed and or taken care of in every aspect of your entertainment. You are supposed to be there for entertainment reasons or to get enthralled in a story, not pick it apart because it didn't fit X, Y, Z. That's just my personal opinion. When I read a book, I'm in the book and in that world. I'm trying to escape my reality because I'm in my reality all the other time and I live it every day. So do I want to go into a book and be right back where I was? No, I do not, in all honesty. If I read a fictional novel, whether that be fantasy, horror, or romance, or whatever the case may be, and you try to put me in the reality that I'm currently living in, I will have no interest in that. I want to read something that's going to enthrall me in another world, and that's where I need to be placed. I don't want my reality because I already live that. You're not doing me any favors, to be honest. That being said, there are exceptions to this, and I'm not telling anyone how to write because you can write however you want. But as a reader, do not expect a writer to please every aspect of your life. So please, when you read a book, don't try to always interject all your feelings and what you want the world to be into this writer's book, because that writer has no obligation to make sure that you aren't upset about reading their book or it didn't fit you, because there's no way they could know that, because there's lots of people in the world and everyone's different. So give them a break. Anyway, that's my cover on Twilight being in a romance horror setting. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, or if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down too. It's all the same to me. But I will see you in the next one. Stay scared.